Welcome to Lecture 22, which will cover bias and prejudice. The topics that we're going to focus on are attribution, the fundamental attribution error, the just world hypothesis, something called cognitive dissonance, and then we'll get to prejudice. So let's start with attribution. First of all, what is it? Well, attribution is when we try to make sense of other people's actions in some way. We try to understand why people do what they do. So attribution is a process. It's an inference or the best guess you draw as to why someone did what they did. So here's a picture of a fellow falling down the stairs. Attribution would be when we try to come up with an explanation for why he fell down the stairs. Did he fall down the stairs because he's a clumsy person and he falls a lot? Or did he fall down the stairs because of some situational issue, such as the stairs being slippery or not well built? That's attribution. Making your best guess, inferring why people do what they do. And we kind of can't stop ourselves from making attributions. And we've known that for a very long time from this very simple film that I'm going to show you, created by this guy, Heider. And I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to show it, and then we'll talk about it. So check this out. Just watch this. Now, if I ask you, why did the little shapes move in the way they did? Well, we see shapes chasing each other, shapes being scared. We attribute or make inferences about these completely non-living, non-human entities, right? These little drawings. We can't stop ourselves from drawing inferences. Attribution, right? The tendency to understand or to look for reasons for why people do the things they do. There are basically two types of attributions, and we've already touched on them. One of them is we attribute causes to someone's personality. These are called dispositional attributions. We're understanding someone's behavior in terms of something about them, their personality, their tendencies, their disposition. If my neighbor is out of work and I make a dispositional attribution as to why he's out of work, I might say he's lazy, he doesn't work hard enough, he's not motivated. These are all dispositions that are about him as a person. The other one is situational attribution, which is I attribute other people's actions to the situation that they're in, not to their personality or their tendencies or their likes or dislikes, but to the situation that they're in. So, for example, my neighbor who doesn't have a job, if I understand that or make attributions that are situational, I would say, well, unemployment is really high right now. It's hard to find a job. The economy is bad. Our capitalist system is keeping people down. These are all descriptions of the situation, not the person, but the situation. So those are the two major types of attributions. Are you attributing somebody's actions or situation to something about them as a person or something about their situation? Now, here's the interesting part. We are biased in the way that we make attributions, and we're biased in a couple of ways. And the first bias I'm going to tell you about is something called the fundamental attribution error. The fundamental attribution error says we place too much weight, too much importance in attributions that are about the person, about their disposition or personality. And we don't give enough weight to the situation. That's the fundamental attribution error. So, for example, a new employee walks into his office at work, and on his first day, he stumbles over a carpet. The fundamental attribution error would say that an observer would interpret that new employee's falling as something about him as a person, right? So I noticed a new guy was stumbling when he came in. How clumsy can you be? Why doesn't he watch where he's going? That is the fundamental attribution error. We tend to assume that people act the way they do because of their personality and not so much their situation. And we commit the fundamental attribution error, this error in attributing by attributing too much to personality and not enough to the situation, in all sorts of settings. We even commit the fundamental attribution error when somebody tells us that it's wrong. And we know that from a lot of studies. I'm just going to point out one. It's called the Williams College study. And in this study, the experimenters hired a woman to walk around campus and to be friendly to some people and to be unfriendly to other people. Okay? So all the study consisted of was a woman walking around being either nice to people or not nice to people. And then the experimenters walked up to each person after she had interacted with them and asked, I just saw you interacting with this woman, what's she like? So they're asking for an attribution. And at the beginning, the result was exactly what you would expect. The people who she treated nicely thought she was a nice person, and the people that she treated in an unfriendly way thought she was a mean person. Okay, that's not terribly surprising. But the shocker was, after they made their disposition, the experimenters stopped them and said, okay, actually, you're part of an experiment. We paid that woman to be nice to you, or we paid that woman to be mean to you. So they told them exactly what the experiment was about. And then they asked, so now what do you think of this person? So they were just told that the woman behaved as she did because she was paid to do so by the experimenters. And then asked, now what do you think of the person? The logical conclusion would be, oh, she behaved nicely to me, or she was mean to me because she was paid to, so now I actually don't know much about the person. But that's not what people did. They heard the explanation that she was paid to do what she did, that the entire thing was situational. And what was people's response? I still think she's mean. I still think she's nice. We can't stop ourselves from committing the fundamental attribution error, to attributing other people's behaviors to their personality and not to the situation. Here's another set of experimental results about the fundamental attribution error. Simple study. You walk into a room and you are given an essay to read. The essay is about Fidel Castro, who was the leader, president of Cuba for almost 50 years. Very powerful person. So people have very strong beliefs one way or the other about Fidel Castro. Anyway, study. You walk into a room, you're given an essay, and the essay is either pro-Fidel Castro or anti-Fidel Castro. In other words, the essay could be Fidel Castro's a great guy or Fidel Castro's a dirty dog. And then after you read it, the experimenter says, what do you think the author of that essay that you just read, what do you think the author believes? And not surprisingly, if the subjects are told that the authors picked whether they were going to write a pro or anti-Castro essay, then people quite logically said, oh, they picked a pro-Castro essay. I guess they like Castro. Or they picked an anti-Castro essay to write. They must not like Castro. Easy. But for half the subjects, the experimenters told them that the essay that you just read was written by someone who had no choice in the matter of whether they were writing a pro or anti-Castro essay, that the topic of the essay was assigned to them. So now it's all about their situation, right? So people should say, I have no idea if the author is pro or anti-Castro because the essay topic was assigned to them. But that's not what people do. The people who read the pro-Castro essay assume that the author really liked Castro, even though they know that the person who wrote the essay had no choice over whether they had to write a pro or anti-Castro essay. And the reverse held for the anti-Castro essays. People assume that the anti-Castro essays were written by people who don't like Castro, even though they had been told that the people had no choice. That is the fundamental attribution error. And watch yourself. We all do it a lot. All right. So now I'm going to complicate things a little bit. The fundamental attribution error is when we make judgments or attributions, we make inferences about other people. How do we interpret what happens to us? There is another important bias. It's called the actor-observer bias. We do one thing when we're looking at other people, but we do something entirely different when we're making attributions about our own behavior. Okay, let's start with failure. When I failed because the exam was too hard. I failed because the professor didn't write a good exam or didn't give me enough time to take the exam. Something about the situation explains my failure. But when other people fail, that's not what I do. I do the opposite. Somebody else failed because they're dumb. Oh, he failed the test because he's dumb, or he failed the test because he doesn't care about this class. Something about him as a person. I fell down the steps because they were slippery. You fell down the steps because you're clumsy. You see the difference? Yeah. The way we make attributions depends on whether we're talking about ourselves or someone else, and it also depends on whether we're talking about failures or successes. It's kind of complicated. So here are some more examples of observer-actor bias when we're talking about failure. So let's describe homelessness as failure. Now let's say I'm homeless. The attribution, the understanding that I make of my own situation is that I'm homeless because the economy is bad. But if I see somebody else is homeless, I don't say they're homeless because the economy is bad. I'll say they're homeless because they don't work hard enough. Think about that kind of bias. I'm an addict because my childhood was terrible. He's an addict because he has no self-control. So mine is situational, his is personality. I got COVID because COVID is everywhere. You can't escape it. He got COVID because he didn't take care of himself and wear a mask. Get it? Now, that was for failures. It turns out with successes, we do exactly the opposite. So I aced an exam because I'm smart, because I study hard, because I'm dedicated. Something about me now. Remember, with my failures, I'm saying it's something about the situation. But when it's about success, it's all about me, baby. I did well on the exam because I'm smart. Why did other students in the class do well on the exam? Oh, it was an easy exam. So when they succeed, it's about the situation. When I succeed, it's about me. So we flipped completely between failures and successes. I married well because I'm charming and gorgeous. He married well because he lives in a neighborhood of amazing people. Right? So I married well, me, it's about me. He had a success, it's about the situation. I have a good job because I'm really hardworking and dedicated. She has a good job because she got lucky. Right? You get it? That bias, that what we do depends on whether something's understood as a failure or a success, that is a self-serving attribution. The pattern of when I succeed, it's about me, but when I fail, it's about the situation. That is self-serving, right? It plays to my ego. So we call that a self-serving attribution. We credit our failures to situations. I failed, but it's not about me. And our successes are all about me. Why do we do this? Why are we so biased in this way? And you watch. Just hang out with your family and watch how they make attributions and whether the attributions are about themselves or the situation. Why do we do this? Why are we so biased? Well, it makes us feel good. It maintains our self-esteem. But it's also the case that I know more about my own situations than I know about other people's situations. And so that might be part of the reason too. Thanks.